Let's talk about the debt ceiling negotiations. You and I have been around Washington a pretty long time, and maybe I'm just too cynical. When people are talking about the economy melting down and there's no way a deal's going to get done, I've just seen too many times the deal gets done. Does it look like we're moving in that direction again here?
Well, it does. You can see the outlines of a deal starting to emerge. The negotiators went late into last night. They have been circling around, I think, a compromise that would involve extending the debt ceiling by about 2 years, at the same time imposing spending caps for that same 2-year period. That doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of details still to be worked out, but you can see how they can get there. Now, the question then becomes, if, in fact, Biden and McCarthy can agree, can they then pull their caucuses together to get it through the House? And that's a really interesting question, right? Because McCarthy has, of course, the narrowest House majority you can imagine with his Republicans. He's going to lose a number of the most conservative Republicans on a vote that does anything to compromise. The Democrats are unhappy with some of the things that might be in this deal as well, and so President Biden's going to lose a lot of them. The question is, can they get together a majority, and will the majority look strong enough in both parties that both leaders come out of it feeling okay about it, rather than being henpecked by the people on the right and the left who don't like the deal?
Well, Peter, this sounds crazy. It kind of sounds like the way Washington used to work, where you negotiate, you walk away from the deal, the extremes on both sides aren't happy, but you find people in both parties that actually stop the United States from defaulting. It actually sounds like, well, a pretty healthy system right now, at least in these negotiations.
Yeah, now you can argue whether the debt ceiling is one way to actually accomplish that, but you're right that we do seem to be having productive conversations. That's the word you hear all the time now at the White House briefing room, productive. That's not a word you've heard a lot in the last few years in Washington. Neither side is going to be happy with the compromises that were made, but it is a period of divided government. And when you don't control all of the levers of government, you're going to have to give something in order to get something, and that's where both sides seem to actually be focused for the moment.
Well, and Susan Del Percio, I mean, again, speaking about radical concepts, guess what? There are a lot of Democrats who say, well, no, we're not going to cut anything. We're going to have a completely. No, actually, when New York State Democrats couldn't figure out a way to properly redistrict in a way that wouldn't be overturned by courts, they lost the House. Guess what? There are consequences to that. If you don't win elections, if Republicans, even by the barest of margins, they underperformed radically, but they still control it by the barest of margins, there are consequences. This is what legislating's about. You want to have a clean debt ceiling increase, win both houses next time, right?
That's absolutely right. And let's face it, Joe, nothing motivates Congress to act like a fiscal deadline right in front of a holiday weekend where everyone's trying to get home. So I think what we'll see is probably, to Peter's point, a deal work out. But the big question is, how many Democrats can McCarthy get on board, and how many Republicans will he lose? Especially the Republicans. I was thinking about the Margaret Thatcher quote, where it used to be about doing something. Now it's about being someone. And there are a lot of members of Congress who are more concerned about being someone. And are those members, if McCarthy can pass something with bipartisan support, are they going to go after his speakership? What faces him after this vote? Now, I think that he'll be okay, but this is going to be a significant time for McCarthy's time as Speaker, more than I think that when they get to making a deal on the debt ceiling.
Yeah, and Jen Psaki, of course, you don't want to bet against Joe Biden in this case, being able to work a deal with Democrats and Republicans. After all, my gosh, you'd have to go back a very long way to find a president that's had more bipartisan legislation passed. It looks like he's doing it again. Some progressives aren't happy about it, but the White House is staying quiet, unusually quiet. Is that part of the strategy to get the deal done?
Yeah, but it's a negotiation strategy, Joe. It's not a messaging or a communication strategy. There is not a single press or communications official who works in the White House now, or probably has ever worked in a White House, that would design this as their messaging strategy, because obviously they're ceding a lot of public ground to Kevin McCarthy and Republicans. But what President Biden learned when I was still there is that when you tell the public every development that that's happening in negotiations, sometimes it kills the deal. So in the White House right now, they are a lot of them have been through these before. They've been through many, many rodeos, and they know that they have to stay quiet to give Kevin McCarthy a little bit of public space right now to get a final deal. The thing that is concerning with the officials that I've talked to is it's very unclear, and Susan kind of touched on this, how many votes Kevin McCarthy can get. Yes, there's definitely unrest among members of the Democratic Party as well, among the progressive wing of the party, that's for sure, and some of them will not vote for a deal. But Kevin McCarthy is pretty untested on wrangling votes and counting votes, as we saw when he was trying to become Speaker. And that's challenging also for the White House, too, because it's hard to know how many they're going to need to pull up from the Democratic side. So they're quiet on purpose, but it's not a messaging strategy. It's a get the deal done strategy.
Get the deal done strategy, and it's amateurs that are the ones that run out and talk into microphones to tell people where they're going every step of the way. I'm reminded of the Democrats' first year in power in 21, where every day they were negotiating against each other, criticizing each other publicly. Jonathan O'Meara, like Jen said, you've got a negotiating partner, and that's what Kevin McCarthy is right now to Joe Biden, a negotiating partner who's having trouble with not only his base, but the majority of the Republican conference. So you give that person space. You're not going out there saying things like, we're getting the better of him here, we're getting the better of him there. Even if your own side is complaining about what's going on, you stay quiet, you keep your head down, you get the deal done, and then you can talk about it after, right? And it seems like, I don't know, it seems like Joe Biden's done this before.
Yeah, this is an approach he has used in the past and trying to do now. The one exception was one day last weekend when the president was still in Japan and talks really hit a snag. That was the one day where we heard a lot from the White House, pointing fingers at Republicans saying, hey, they're trying to change the deal. Once they got over that particular hurdle, White House has gone quiet again. Now, that's to the frustration of some Democrats, echoing Jen's point, who said they've lost the messaging space here and they feel like they're losing some of the politics of this. But the bet inside the West Wing is what has been so many times, that voters will reward getting a big thing done. They'll forget the messiness, they'll forget the Beltway noise, they'll forget the circus-like atmosphere, and they'll just say, okay, hey, the president got a bipartisan agreement done, and we will reward him for that next time we go to the ballot box. But a note of caution here. Certainly the momentum is heading the right way, but the question is, will they have the votes? Because there are enough Democrats who have signaled unhappiness about this deal that and White House aides think they might need about 100 or more of them to sign on to make up for the defections that McCarthy's going to face. His leadership is obviously hanging by a thread at all times. That there could be, at the very least, the clock is ticking here, and that they're going to have a lot of work to do in just a week's time.
Well, Peter Baker, that's why the New York Times wrote the article they wrote yesterday, which, we're all talking about Kevin McCarthy. It's a challenge for Kevin McCarthy. It's a challenge for Joe Biden. It's also Hakeem Jeffries' first big challenge. Because there's no doubt that right now, Joe Biden, Kevin McCarthy, and Hakeem Jeffries are all on the same team. And that's the team that says we can't default and let the U.S. economy go belly up. And so they're going to have to figure out how to get 218 votes in the House. And I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Hakeem Jeffries to say, are you going to be able to get those 100 or so Democrats that you're going to need because of all the Republican defections?
Yeah, and I think that's why you see Hakeem Jeffries taking a somewhat different tack than the White House. To Jen's point about the White House going quiet, Hakeem Jeffries is not going quiet. He's reacting to the consternation among his caucus, people who want a more outspoken Democratic message out there. He's been the one delivering. He's the bad cop to the good cop of Biden in that sense. But that provides a little bit of red meat for the progressives who want to be out there fighting. That also gives them credibility when the moment comes, if they have a deal that they can live with, in which Hakeem Jeffries says, look, I'm with you. I've been with you all along, but this is the deal we're going to get. Let's go ahead and take it in order to corral these votes. But you're right, he's untested, too, that he's a new figure in this leadership. It's been Nancy Pelosi's Democratic Party for an awful long time. It's now Hakeem Jeffries' Democratic Party in the House, and we'll see how he does. But he's got the support, we think, of a lot of members of his caucus, and now he has to bring them over the finish line if they get there.
Let's bring in Stephanie Ruhle, of course, host of the 11th Hour. Stephanie.